And welcome to this another edition of On Policy Magazine and conversations with leaders on major issues facing our continent and our sub-region. I am Denis Foretia. I'm the Executive Chair and NKAFU Policy Institute, and it's indeed a great pleasure for me to welcome you to this edition. This edition is really concentrated on how we are making progress or not on the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. Our goal is to assess, analyze where we are regarding the implementation of the AFTA in the Central Africa region. Today, I am welcoming really two important guests. The first is Dr. Barnabé Okouda, who is the Executive Director of CAMERCAP-PARC, a think tank, policy think tank, renowned policy think tank in Cameroon. My second guest is Dr. Eyolo Monono, who is with the AU ECOSOC committee. I'll take a simple break and we'll be back in a minute. Welcome back. Dr. Barnabé, let me start with you. We've talked about AFTA, which was passed in 2018 and ratified a few years later by the majority of countries and is being implemented. The AFTA Secretariat is in operations currently in Accra. I am very interested to start with understanding where we are in Central Africa. What is the level of implementation of AFTA in the Central Africa region?
Merci beaucoup pour cette opportunité que vous nous donnez d'intervenir sur la question cruciale de la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine, la ZLECAF, AFTA comme on dit en anglais. Il faut rappeler qu'effectivement, depuis 2018, quand a commencé le processus de ratification, et notamment en ce qui concerne le Cameroun, c'est en 2021. Mais le point que nous faisons aujourd'hui, selon le secrétariat de la ZLECAF, c'est que sur l'ensemble du continent africain, nous avons 47 pays qui ont déjà ratifié cet accord-là et qui sont donc supposés être engagés dans le processus. Mais il faut rappeler aussi que le Cameroun fait partie du groupe des 8 pays qui ont participé à l'initiative. On a dit, on n'a pas d'initiative de commerce guidé, mais en fait c'était les pays test. 8 pays qui devaient donc lancer ce processus-là pour voir comment ça marche. Mais nous ne serons pas très négatifs en rappelant que, en ce qui concerne le Cameroun, aujourd'hui, 4-5 ans après, nous avons 4 transactions réalisées. Only 4 transactions. 3 in export and 1 in import. Et cela fait quand même curieux de constater que avec tout ce qui est possible d'échanger en Afrique, avec les conditions établies, que nous n'ayons que 4 transactions réalisées. Et il faut en plus voir les montants qui sont concernés et les quantités, cela n'est pas à la hauteur de ce qui devait être fait. Donc pour dire que, en termes d'objectifs, nous restons vraiment sur notre chemin.
Thank you very much for that. And just to follow up a little bit, Dr. Barnabé, with only 4 transactions, in what sectors are these transactions happening that you're having, or in more particular, in other words, what are the areas where is the value chain that were to develop as part of AFTA? Do you see any real moves in those angles?
Les chaînes de valeur ont été identifiées. Il y a eu la liste des produits arrêtés par les ZLECAF, elle est là. Mais c'est que dans ce champ ouvert, nous ne faisons pas ce qu'il faut faire. Aujourd'hui, le Cameroun a exporté du thé au Ghana, on a exporté des safou et on a importé de la résine de la Tunisie ou de l'Algérie. Alors vous voyez que en ce qui concerne les produits agricoles, où le Cameroun a la possibilité, nous parlons tout à l'heure des potentialités, le potentiel est là, la production est même là. Mais c'est cette connexion de rentrer dans le jeu qui freine. Et peut-être qu'on pourrait identifier les facteurs qui limitent cela à notre avis. Et parmi cela, nous constatons que pour l'instant, Ces transactions ont été menées par des très petites entreprises, des petites organisations, pour ne même pas dire des associations qui ont réalisé ces transactions. Nous attendons encore voir les entreprises installées, établies, rentrer dans le jeu, ce qui n'est pas encore fait. Si nous prenons seulement le domaine de l'agriculture où il y a beaucoup à échanger, la demande, elle existe, mais qu'est-ce qui freine pour que ce processus-là soit enclenché ne serait-ce qu'à un niveau moyen, pour ne même pas dire optimal. Donc, ce n'est pas la réflexion qui a manqué, les produits sont là, mais il y a quelque chose qui coince au niveau de ces transactions.
No, thank you very much for that. Some of the challenges that you've highlighted. Dr. Monono, let me come to you. Dr. Barnabé has talked about, only 4 transactions like that a country like Cameroon as part of AFTA has been able to execute to date. And the challenges, especially with very, very small enterprises that are involved. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the challenges that we currently face, that our countries are facing regarding effective implementation of AFTA?
Thank you very much for inviting me at this policy program to talk about the African Free Trade Area, which is very key. And when we talk about being key is when you look at the African Union vis-a-vis its Agenda 2063, it falls within the framework that there is no way that we want to talk about African being an emergent or talking about economic growth without talking about inter-trade within African countries. But yes, as you rightly said, looking at the difficulties that we are facing, what really is the problem? One of the key is that before the coming of this agreement, we have already existing bilateral and sometimes even multilateral agreements with other state parties. I just want to give an example, and within the framework of Central Africa, if we look at the African Union ACP partnership agreement that Cameroon had to ratify at a certain point. This already brings a question, and how did Cameroon ratify this? It ratified this not with the other members within the sub-region, because the AU ACP partnership was being done in terms of different blocks. So it was CEMAC plus Sao Tome and Principe, but because of the national interest of Cameroon, it went ahead to ratify this without the other. So we cannot be talking about trying to build an economic union which has to do with free movement of goods, persons, and services. And we have already existing trade agreements, which contradicts what this has to bring. So that is one of the key fundamental issue, which is also a blockage. So when you start seeing already existing partnerships, which goes more of national interest, more of protectionism, it puts in question the existence of this. But this is what we need. Another key factor that we want to look is the aspect of overlapping membership within the sub-region. Because when you look at all of it, what is being recognized by the African Union, it is ECAS, the Economic Community. But how long has now, you have CEMAC, which is also another member, which also has already come up with a level of free movement. But now with these two bodies, there have been countless issue of how do we bring these two bodies together, and which is showing that there is no political will at a certain level to see that these two bodies can come together, and then it brings a problem. And when we move even within the framework of ECAS, you see that there are member countries in ECAS that belongs to Southern Africa, that belongs to East Africa Trade Union. So that alone, those are the challenges where we find ourselves that we cannot really implement this African Free Trade Agreement when these already existing trade agreements are there, and they're blocking the really existence of this trade in terms of its implementation.
So thank you very much for that. That's a huge issue. We've talked a lot regarding how to bring CEMAC into ECAS, or how to really try to figure out a better formula. Now, how do you see that evolving? Because the issue of ECAS is one thing. We have the AFTA currently or so, and there is the lack of political will that is there. What is a realistic way out outside of political will, or how do we push political will? Is there a way to push political will regarding that?
There is a way, because one of the key things that we have to come to understand is that there's no way that if we look at even the market size Look at CEMAC. What is its market size? Look at the countries which belongs to CEMAC. Okay, Cameroon is around 20 million. You go to Chad, how many million? But now you have a very large market. When you go down to Angola, you go down to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where you have bigger markets. So we have to be looking broader, not trying to see how we can consolidate colonial agreements and which are going outdated. I think we need to be forward-looking in terms of what we need in terms of as a continent. And as a continent, and with the framework of AFTA is that we need a bigger market. And this bigger market and having more diversification. The aspect of diversification is key. And when we start looking at the fact that what are we producing, and that the others are not, and that we can do an exchange. And so when we look at CEMAC as a whole, it has a very small, myopic kind of the market, which is not there. Even if you want to look at the diversification of its economy. Because so a country like Cameroon might feel that, okay, I have everything, what do I need from these other countries? But I think we have to go broader and to see that there's a bigger market when it comes to ECAS, and that we need to exploit. And so for the reason of economic growth, for the reason of the aspect of how can we have a bigger market, how can we expand, and for the long term of the African Union, because there's no way that the African Union is recognizing CEMAC as one of its regional economic blocks. And so we need to push forward. Those reflections are ongoing, but as we say, there's no need why we should have constant reflection without actions. And so we need actions now, and the actions that we need to take is that there's a need for us to sit at the level of ECAS and to see how can we take this forward to make the continent move forward.
No, thank you so much for that. And Dr. Barnabé, let me come to you. And I want to, push regarding private sector a little bit, because, our private sector, in the sub-region is still very small. What is your take on what they are doing currently regarding AFTA, their receptibility or whatever engagements they are having with government on its implementation? How do you read private sector in the Central Africa region and its engagement regarding AFTA?
Ce que nous disons, c'est que notre secteur privé est timide. Et c'est cette timidité-là qu'il faut briser. On le disait tout à l'heure, que qu'est-ce que nous avons à offrir et qu'est-ce que nous avons à prendre chez les autres. Cette analyse-là, elle est faite, elle existe. Le Cameroun a des choses à proposer, à offrir, ne serait-ce que dans la zone CAC. En rappelant, en ce qui concerne les chiffres, la CAC, ça fait 220 millions de population. Alors, si nous projetons sur ce marché de 220 millions de population, on dit, voilà un marché qu'il a. Et en face, nous avons le Nigeria qui a 210. Donc, voilà, le Cameroun est dans une zone qui fait 400 millions de population. Comment notre secteur privé doit se positionner par rapport à ça? D'où l'intérêt, comme je disais tout à l'heure, que être proactif, notamment en ce qui concerne nos entreprises. Les analyses nous ont démontré, les entreprises, que le Cameroun, c'est essentiellement plus de 90% des TPE et PME. Alors, ce que nous pensons que ce groupement d'entreprises devrait réaliser, c'est effectivement de capter les capacités de production, de productivité et de compétitivité. Production parce que la masse critique aujourd'hui ne permet pas justement d'aller conquérir ces marchés. Alors, maintenant la productivité, c'est qu'on fait mieux, et la compétitivité, c'est qu'on peut effectivement conquérir ces espaces de marché. Donc, il est donc nécessaire aujourd'hui que les entreprises puissent penser d'abord à se mettre ensemble. Comme elles sont petites, donc améliorer la taille en termes de production, en termes de productivité, en termes de compétitivité. Donc ce n'est qu'en se mettant ensemble que l'on peut conquérir ces marchés-là et s'y installer de manière durable. Or, tant qu'on continue avec les petites, très très petites entreprises qui sont là, non, nous ne pouvons pas aller conquérir ce marché-là. D'où l'intérêt justement. Nous pensons que peut-être nous allons parler d'innovation. Il y a certainement beaucoup de choses, il y a beaucoup d'innovations qui sont faites, mais ces innovations-là demandent à passer le stade de l'industrialisation pour pouvoir conquérir la production de masse et gagner les parts de marché. Donc, l'intérêt cet appel donc au secteur privé, parce que nous pensons également que, oui, le secteur public, la volonté politique traîne, mais il est également possible de, nous pensons, nous rêvons, qu'on peut maintenant prendre l'approche bottom-up. Oui. C'est-à-dire partir vers le bas, partir des entreprises pour conquérir l'espace politique et l'espace public. Bon, évidemment, on va parler des infrastructures, de communication, ainsi de suite. Mais je pense qu'il est quand même possible de partir, de faire l'approche bottom-up. Les entreprises peuvent bousculer les gouvernements à ouvrir les couloirs et les corridors pour commercer.
That's extremely important as you're talking about really pushing from below, from bottom up in order to push everything. You mentioned a little bit about infrastructure and you talked about connectivity. So Dr. Monono, let me just follow up, regarding that, to look at when we are talking about after the issue of infrastructure and connectivity, within ECAS or within the sub-region and also within Africa, what progress have you seen regarding, infrastructure or connectivity of the continent? Because the AFTA is about connecting, free movement of goods, services, and people. What do you see currently as the report card regarding that?
I want to queue up with Dr. and looking at the fact that we need to see how to push from bottom up, because I think within the framework of even the AFTA Secretariat, they have tried to come to talk with the business people in Cameroon to make them to understand the importance, and which they know the importance. Looking at the market, talking about 400 million and the rest, the market is there. But as we're saying, is infrastructure. Within the framework of the Omega Plan and even the map, in the beginning of the African Renaissance, you had key people like Thabo Mbeki that they were planning to see how there should be the transnational. The late Colonel Gaddafi was looking about how can you connect Africa from north to south, east to west with railways and the rest, which is part of connectivity. And there's also this plan through Nepal to see how to link the different capitals by road. But you see, these are the difficulties when we look at that is where no matter how the private sector tries, if the policies are not there which are favorable, one, if we're talking about the aspect of the infrastructure that needs to be done, and that needs to be connected. We just got the example of Professor Ponti today, who is talking about the number of checkpoints that you have to. And so take, for example, you want to do, let's look at even the corridor that exists within CEMAC, the Douala-Jamena, Douala-Bangui corridors. And some of the difficulties to even trade within corridors which are within the framework of already an existing economic partnership. And that, so it becomes very difficult if the public policy or the states do not take in the engagement, one, to see how they can improve on infrastructure, two, to reduce the barriers, be it in terms of visa, be in terms of some certain restriction, police checkpoints. These are the things which slow down the bottom-top approach in terms of to push forward the implementation of AFTA.
Yeah, so you've really highlighted those infrastructural barriers and also some of the what they call the non-tariff barriers also, right? Like non-tariff barriers. No, Dr. Okouda, let me come to you on that, because I mean a lot of the work that CAMERCAP-PARC has done has really looked into AFTA, the implementation of AFTA, the barriers that you have. Can you expand on the non-tariff barriers in addition to the tariff barriers that you see, but also some of the studies that you all have worked on?
Okay. Alors, en ce qui concerne les barrières non tarifaires, je pense que on peut déjà citer ces questions des infrastructures, hein, parce que comme on le dit, ça fait des barrières. Le cas que vous avez soulevé tout à l'heure, je veux juste rappeler que l'école de statistique de Yaoundé lycéa a fait l'étude sur le corridor de Douala, N'Djamena, Douala-Bangui. On compte un peu plus de 100 checkpoints. Wow. Cela a été porté, more than 100 checkpoints. Et cela a été porté à l'attention des autorités. Alors, on a essayé de lever, mais on n'a pas atteint moins de 50. Dans tous les cas, ça reste. Et mais quand même, les autorités ont demandé de lever ces barrières-là, mais ça s'est maintenu. Alors, ce problème reste et qui est important. La question, peut-être que je vais la prendre autrement sur les barrières non tarifaires. Je pense que s'il y a quelque chose à dire à l'Union africaine, on a la chance que nous avons un représentant ici, c'est que nous avons l'impression que l'Union africaine, à travers les ZLECAF, a adopté le schéma inverse de ce qu'a fait l'Union européenne. Vous voyez, l'Union européenne, dans l'histoire, on est parti du Benelux, 3 pays, on est arrivé à 6, on est arrivé à 8, à 9, 12 et 24. Voilà. Et justement, pour passer, il y a des conditions de mise à niveau. Rappelez-nous un peu l'histoire de l'Espagne, du Portugal, qui ont fait pour rentrer dans l'Union européenne qui grandit au fur et à mesure. Or, nous avons mis en avant une volonté politique d'intégrer, alors que les conditions minimales d'intégration ne sont pas réunies. C'est pour ça que nous revenons à ce cas de la difficulté de fusionner la CEMAC à l'intérieur de la CAC. Le 18 juillet dernier, le sommet a encore avorté, parce que il y a des égos personnels qui font en sorte que cette fusion-là ne va pas avoir lieu. Alors, parmi donc ces questions de barrières non tarifaires, la BAD vient de publier récemment le rapport 2024 sur l'ouverture des visas en Afrique. Mais ça reste quelque chose de très compliqué. J'ai pu avoir ici, et vous allez voir que dans ce schéma, la zone Afrique centrale reste justement la plus reculée en termes d'ouverture des visas en Afrique. Et parmi les 54 pays, ceux qui ont déjà, ceux qui ont une ouverture acceptable ou bien totale, se situent presque tous hors de la zone CAC. Nous sommes quasiment dans la dernière lignée des pays qui est en ouverture des visas. Or, le commerce va avec les personnes. On ne peut pas vendre les biens ou les services si la personne n'est pas allée prospecter le marché, si elle ne s'est pas déplacée. D'où la question des visas reste fondamentale. On ne peut pas promouvoir la ZLECAF tant que des barrières.
What is in your point of view blocking this issue of visa? Why are we not open to these visa movements?
Alors, nous sommes bloqués parce que nous avons une lecture fausse et tronquée de l'immigration. Je prends 2 exemples que nous connaissons tous. Vous voyez, aujourd'hui, le Kenya ouvre l'entrée. Le Sénégal ouvre l'entrée. Ce que le Kenya et le Sénégal récupèrent par le fait que les Africains entrent là-bas et consomment et sortent, dépasse largement ce que l'on paye à l'entrée des visas. Donc ça, mais malheureusement, ce genre de choses, quand nous le disons, les gens restent bloqués. Bon, il y a aussi des égos sur le plan sociologique. Par exemple, certains pays ont l'impression que plus vous entrez, vous allez retirer les ressources, alors que vous allez plutôt augmenter ces ressources. Donc c'est vraiment une question de volonté, et surtout donc, pour revenir au rôle des think tanks, que les politiques, ceux qui sont les décideurs politiques, comprennent que la réflexion doit précéder l'action. Donc écoutez les analyses politiques, sociologiques, économiques pour prendre des décisions. Mais parfois, on prend les décisions sans se référer à ces analyses-là, à ces think tanks, d'où l'intérêt de ce genre de forum que nous tenons aujourd'hui.
Wow. No, thank you so much for that. Now, Dr. Monono, now as we wrap up a little bit, as you look at where we are at the state of implementation, especially in Central Africa, what would be key things that you would say, okay, these are priority interventions that we must consider at the moment regarding trying to make things move a little bit?
Thank you very much. I think in terms of looking at research and in terms of having the statistics, that it is important, just like how Doctor is saying, in terms of looking at when we have to see how we can improve. Sometimes it doesn't matter how much in terms of the infrastructure, but how can we reduce this barrier in terms of visa, in terms of trying to improve our free movement, in terms of maybe within the framework of Central Africa, we are trying to see how, if we have the aspect of even flying, you have the difficulties. Myself and Bob, we're saying that going to N'Djamena. I'd had an experience going to N'Djamena. I left Yaoundé at 7, 8 with Askai, and I arrived in N'Djamena at 7 in the night. Yeah. So you see, those are the difficulties. Business is time. And so we need to see how we are talking about having an ASA mark. Let me just say, if we started even with an ASA mark, which was there to see how to take the market. So we cannot talk about integration in terms of our market when we don't have free movements of people and we don't have the infrastructures which allows this movement to happen. And then let's come also with the regulations. Because when you look at the aspect of regulations, we see that is why it's important in terms of tax regulation, in terms of if we cannot harmonize our regulations, it becomes a problem because those are the challenges. The aspect two is about money. We know we will take it or not. We have to understand that, just as Prof is saying, I think we had that conversation about the Eurozone and how it started with some few countries and then people joined. We cannot talk about having market, a trade, without us having what are we going to use as convertibility. Because if you want to trade with Nigeria, it means you have to change with a dollar. You go to Nigeria before you change to Naira. If you want to go, so we need to think about that even within the sub-region. Not all the countries might want to start, but I think they need this political way to say that the countries that are willing to. Take for example, why is it that Rwanda prefer to go to East Africa more? It's because of the fluidity through the Mombasa port. They have their way that they can go. It's easy instead of coming to Central Africa. So when you make this fluid enough, when there's a possibility of regulations which favors, and so we need to look at it at a very broader spectrum. A lot of research has been done, but when we want to take at the Central Africa as a whole, there's still so much that has to be done. Because the Secretariat of ECAS, I don't think they're doing enough in terms of saying how to address some of these key issues which needs to be addressed. Because it is not the Secretariat of AFTA that will do that, but I think it is at the level of the sub-regions that I have to take regulations which will favor free movement of goods, service, and people.
Thank you very much, Dr. Monono. And Dr. Barnabé, let me close with you. All the things you see at where we are currently, a few key points that, if we are really serious, we need to be doing.
Alors, si nous voulons être sérieux pour avancer, écoute, nous faisons comme les autres. Comment les autres ont fait? D'abord, cette question d'intégration, nous avons parlé des infrastructures, tout cela. Mais nous pensons qu'aujourd'hui, il faut redonner la place à la pensée, à l'intelligence. Les autres pays sont conçus et se construisent aujourd'hui par l'intelligence et l'action, et non pas les discours politiques. Nous faisons beaucoup de discours politiques, beaucoup de volontés, beaucoup de choses sont dites, mais qui ne sont pas suivies. C'est comme si parler réalisait. Il n'y a que Dieu qui a fait ça, il a parlé, ça a existé. Mais nous devons penser et agir et connecter les deux. Comme nous disons, construire des ponts entre les savoirs et les pouvoirs. Maintenant, ceux qui ont le pouvoir doivent écouter ceux qui ont les savoirs. Maintenant, les mettre en œuvre. Savoir décider en connaissance de cause, après avoir eu un background paper qui a analysé cette situation. Maintenant, je peux décider, sachant le pour et le contre. Je fais le choix. Mais ne pas continuer à faire comme si, à continuer à régner l'intelligence. Parce que toutes ces intelligences qui existent dans une université, dans nos centres de recherche, beaucoup de choses sont produites. Mais qu'est-ce qu'on fait de tout ça? C'est parquet. Il faut redonner la place à l'intelligence.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Barnabé. Really appreciate this, Dr. Monono. Thank you very much. Really appreciate this. Thank you, Dr. Barnabé. And thank you very much for being here for this other edition. And we look forward to the next edition. Thank you.